This podcast represents the opinions of our hosts and guests. The content here should not be taken as medical advice and is for informational purposes only. This podcast also does not establish a standard of care, doctor-patient, or client relationship. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or website, and because each person is so unique, all listeners are encouraged to connect with counseling and medical professionals for assistance with their personal journey. All people, places, and scenarios mentioned in the podcast have been changed to protect the privacy of those involved.
You're listening to the We're Not Fine podcast with Doug Jensen and Dr. Talia Jackson.
Hey guys.
Oh, I've missed you all.
Have you? Has it been, a week?
Oh, but it feels like 2.
Why do you suppose that is? Is there something about this
know.
week that made it feel longer between our connectioning?
It feels, in fact, like a shorter week because I've started sleeping. I've finally mastered the art of sleep, and it's been a problem I've been having like my whole life, and it got really, really bad. And now you're looking at someone who can just sleep and then wake up like a kung fu master. I know.
Boy, if you can bottle that, you would be a scabillionaire.
Well, I will tell you, it does come in a bottle.
Nice.
I'm not sure we want to share what that is because, of course, everyone might be a little different in terms of their makeup and metabolism and
That's
what works.
right.
But
And
boy, is sleep important.
every now and then, better living through chemicals, but most of the time, better living through good habits, a few light supplements, and leafy greens.
By leafy
and exercise,
greens,
and sunlight,
leafy
and relationships.
greens.
Should I go on?
Well, I'm just curious. Leafy greens as in anything?
I was more thinking kale, but yeah, that works too.
You smoke kale?
Has a different effect. Greg, we needed direction.
Why are you looking to Greg for that? I think we can direct ourselves.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Right
Yeah.
into
that's apparent,
a gutter. A gutter right down by the river.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily. My sleep goes in and out and up and down based on what's going on. It's been a very busy ups and downs to the year so far. But it's like it's always this nice escape to like watch something really good. I think Talia, had you been watching White Lotus?
Yes. I might be their number one biggest fan,
I
but
don't
no
know.
spoilers. I'm done with the first season.
Okay, I almost said something about the second season.
Wait, have you finished the second season?
Okay, I watched it the minute it came out and just binged because that's what I do.
Why don't you tell me things? How did you not tell me about this?
I am obsessed with Jennifer Coolidge, like half of the planet.
Yeah, she's my spirit animal.
She can do one-liners that make me just roll, and then I reverse it and reverse it and reverse it to watch it over and over.
And
I think her timing is brilliant.
Her comedic skill is such that she doesn't actually have to speak. Like her face with one expression, I'm dying.
So she was recently at some award ceremony and someone asked her because she's had such a huge year. She's been in a number of shows. But White Lotus really is her bag, I think. And, the interesting thing, they asked her what was the, role that she really wanted to take on. And typical of Jennifer Coolidge, she says, I've always wanted to play a dolphin.
She was also in The Watcher.
Yeah,
which was
I watched
also
that. I'm a binger. Yep.
But I will say that she's always the same character. There are certain people like that in every single show, they're the same character, but they do it so well. Like The Rock. Well, he's always himself.
I barely hear him talk when I'm looking at him. I'm not sure what that's about, but that's all I'm going to say about the life-size cardboard cutout in my workout area of my basement.
Oh, that's right.
Oh,
Is
my.
he your inspiration or your muse?
I have two of them, but it doesn't come
John
off well.
Cena.
Oh, it is John Cena's the other one. Yep.
So you like a thick neck. That's what you're into. You like it when like it goes sort of triangularly out from like the ear to the shoulder.
I am going to stop this conversation about what I like.
Does John Cena have hair? I'm just trying to pull together a theme. He doesn't.
Anyway, next. So
we do have some mailbags for today.
What? Do we have to stop on Jennifer Coolidge? Like, even way back to Legally Blonde, she was the same character. I mean, she has the same comedic sense.
She was in Legally Blonde?
Are you kidding me? Oh, my
come
God,
on.
I have to read
someone has some movie homework when she gets home.
Talia,
I mean, that's like 25 years old.
Mm.
And, I want to make one more comment about this. I saw one of the interviews where she talked about how those characters, like in Legally Blonde, she played a hairdresser whose boyfriend wasn't treating her well. Does that ring a bell?
Oh, my God, yes.
And the funny thing is, she said women, come up to her now, or people come up to her and they're like, I can totally relate to you. And she's very sweet, so she doesn't seem to necessarily say that was a character I played. But, I think that's what they get a lot of times. And she's very relatable. She's so funny. Anyway,
she's the best.
I will let you mailbag it, Greg.
Okay, here we go. So just as a reminder for our audience, you can send your questions in at questions@we'renotfine.com, which is where our next voice note came in recently.
Sweet. From
Damien. And of course, the names in the scenario have been altered a little bit to protect the identity of the person. But
I like that name you chose.
Yeah, I chose Damien.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that from the Devil shows?
Not the same.
I know what you're talking about.
The Omen.
Damien.
Oh, yes.
We'll talk about why you
another
chose
show that should have continued but didn't. It didn't work out. But all right, so here we go.
When you're mentally exhausted from trying to connect with potential dates online, is it feasible to just trust that it'll happen when you stop trying, or at least expect it? Or is this just a myth? How does anything come to fruition if you're not being deliberate?
I got to tell you, Damien, I love the question and the way that you framed it. I'm going to say you have to put yourself out there for something to happen. I'm not someone who thinks we should wait around waiting for life to happen. So, Damien, I love how you said that. I also want to just comment, though, on your you have a beautiful accent, by the way. But I also want to comment on, like, what does it mean to be mentally exhausted by that, or exhausted? And that comes into, like, how you're doing this and the method by which you're doing it and how often you're checking and what app you're using and how clear your profile is about what you're looking for. Because I think the more clear, and we talked about this a little bit when we talked about Dating Sunday on a previous episode, but I think the more you put out there about who you are and what you're looking for and you know yourself, I think it's much more likely that the energy you expend on the other people or the other interactions you have will become lessened, and you can really fine tune what you're looking for. But my answer to that is do not be passive about that. Put yourself out there in the world. There's no way for something to happen unless you do.
I agree. Be deliberate and have purpose and be intentional and don't give up. Amp up your self-care so that you have more energy to put around this. And a lot of people I know that are online with the apps need to take breaks from the apps. And sometimes you just need to take breaks from being online and just go and breathe in some fresh air, hang out with some real people, surround yourself with live music and friends and family so that you feel really grounded. And maybe you want to give a different way of meeting people a try, because sometimes people just get oversaturated with online and it numbs out one part of your brain, but then it also leaves you sometimes feeling really isolated and alone, like you're putting so much effort and energy into something that isn't yielding any results. And so that's when you need to just find your people, be around actual humans that love you. You love the way they see you. You remember who you are, self-care, and then get right back on board, because I mean, there's the volume. You are only going to see the same two people if you go to the same coffee shop for 5 years, right? Or you're going to see like 1,000 options online. It is exhausting. So just, be tender with yourself and navigate through it. And
well, and you're not alone. There's a lot of people who feel that way, particularly when you're looking online or you're using an app or whatnot. And so depending on what the app is and, if it's a quick swipe or if there is some sort of interaction that you can have with these people, I'm loving, we talked a little bit about Hinge last time. I'm loving that there's a voice option where you can actually learn a little bit more about what that person sounds like, because that's part of chemistry. So again, I would say, number one, again, not an uncommon experience to feel kind of that fatigue from not feeling like it's going in the direction. But again, all you can do is put yourself out there in the most clear, concise, and thoughtful way and see what comes your way. But do not think, again, I'm going to challenge the idea. I think it's a myth that, and sometimes it happens. I mean, sometimes, as Talia knows from her own marriage, you meet on a bus just out of happen chance. She met her husband that way. But I would say that I think by and large, you have to keep your eyes and ears open, because that person might be around the corner.
Do you guys think it's harder for people, or let me say this, do you think people are more prone to get mentally exhausted when they have more baggage or circumstances that are harder for others to relate to or make it more difficult in dating situations?
100%. The thing about what you just said, Greg, the reality is we've been living in a pandemic. And so part of the isolation factor, people are working remotely. People are doing these, my therapy appointments. I'm now I have a hybrid practice where I'm half in the office and half remote. We're just not interacting as much with people. And that stress from the pandemic, I'm not even sure. I think we need an episode on that, because I think we're just starting to unravel from a political and racial and pandemic. And, there's more pandemic stuff coming out and there's more discussions about that. I think we're all a little bit exhausted. So take into account, Damien, as well. Like, the reality is, I think everyone's a little bit more stressed than they used to be. The economy is not bursting at the seams. Our 401ks and our IRAs are at risk and not doing great. And I'm someone who probably believes they'll bounce back, but I'm also of an age where it can still bounce back. So I think there's a lot of stressors, going to your point, Greg, aside from whatever personally people might have going on, whatever that is.
I don't necessarily think that. I think that, yes, the level of stress, the level of fatigue probably go hand in hand. But I would say that people that do have baggage, so does everybody else, right? Like, don't let that be a reason why you don't go forward and try to find your people and try to find people that you really connect with. What I would say that could be more exhausting is if you are not self-aware, if you're not doing your work, if you don't know yourself and you're moving forward in your life being very secretive and closed up and not really putting out into the world who you are and what you're looking for, that could be really exhausting. And so, yes, if you put yourself out there, maybe not every detail of every Louis Vuitton bag that you're schlepping around with you everywhere you go, but
what a privileged comment that was.
Oh, I love you.
Or
Gucci, or, Byerly's and Lund's or Safeway or whatever. Whatever bags you're carrying around with you. But it is important to put out there, if you have baggage and you're doing your work, at least from my experience talking to people, there's nothing more attractive. People are not scared away by baggage. They're scared away by lack of awareness and people that are afraid of therapy, afraid of looking internally. So bring on the baggage. You're going to find someone who will carry the weight of that with you and not judge you and love you and not be horrified or disgusted. They're going to love that you know yourself and know what you're looking for.
I think that's a really, really good comment. I do think there are people, by the way, who will shy away from baggage. Those are likely the people who are not kind of stable in their own life. And so I think the more you put yourself out there, and I remember, not to, I'm going to focus on one particular health issue. I had a client who had a series of chronic and long-term and lifetime sexual health diseases. And, that person was really struggling with disclosing all of that to the people he was with out of fear of transmission and whatnot. And the reality is I remember being very clear with him, like, but this is what it is. Like, this is what you have. This is what you are doing to manage that, which you're doing incredibly good. He was doing an incredibly great job at managing all of his symptoms and managing his chronic illnesses. And the reality is, who cares? Put yourself out there. And if people discriminate, and I will tell you as a gay man who has worked in the AIDS crisis of the 80s and 90s, the reality is I know there's stigma about that, particularly in the past. We should no longer have stigma because we have PrEP and we have, medications that help people stabilize their health in a really huge way. So we're in a very different time. But boy, people had a lot of discrimination toward themselves. And I always told people, fuck it. You don't want to be with someone who doesn't want to be with you or doesn't have the ability to understand who you are and what you're going through. And, for the people, and I think you referenced this, Talia, the people who do their work, don't put that shit on other people.
Right.
They manage it themselves, which is why therapy's there and why supports are there and whatnot. I don't think you should put it on somebody else necessarily. And Damien, I don't know if there's any of those circumstances for you that might be interfering. The other thing I just want to put out there, I got, Talia, you were talking about feeling lonely or whatnot. And, I always think about loneliness as a trigger to like substance abuse or increased use of alcohol and, maybe some negative behaviors that aren't great, including that sort of addictive way that we look at apps. Like, did someone like us? Did we get a ringer?
That's right.
What a signal? That's notification. That's what that's called.
And that's inherently exhausting.
Notifications?
Well, the dopamine, addiction.
So you're right. I mean, I think we end up being really addicted to these apps and having people like us or woof at us or whatever swipe at us. I don't know what all the ways are that we connect with people on those apps, but, I think we get addicted to wanting that affirmation. And that part is the concerning part from where I sit.
So in terms of the last question that Damien asked, do you need to be deliberate or just kind of live and let God? And if you run into them, you do. If you don't, any thoughts from either of you on, do you need to date with intention or just kind of live your life and hope for the best?
I think we both. Go ahead.
Live and let God. I always think about pray to God, but swim towards the shore anyway. Is that like an old Jewish proverb? I don't know. But yes, you can do it all. Why don't you try it all at the same time? Can you put yourself out there with purpose and deliberately put yourself in places where you might meet amazing people, whatever that looks like, in person or online, while also maybe limiting the amount of time you're going to allow yourself to obsess or check in, maybe let it take up less space. I don't know. What do you think, Doug?
No, I think that's true. I mean, I think, I think both of us have said this earlier in this conversation. I think you do need to be deliberate. I think letting life kind of pass you by and not being clear on what your goals are. We just got, we're into the new year here where I think being thoughtful about how you want your life to look. But I don't think you can, I remember one of my most enjoyable experiences as a therapist, probably about 20 years ago. This very successful woman came into my office and I said, so tell me, what you're looking for from this therapy experience. And she said, I want a husband. And I honestly started laughing. I'm like, oh boy. I said, I'm not sure that this is the right place, but I will tell you that of course it was, because all of the pieces of that puzzle for her about what it is that she was looking for in her life and how to be deliberate, to use that word, deliberate about what she was looking for, it was really critical. So we talked about what do you need to do to find that person? It was probably 2 years and she was married. And really it was about, absolutely. She needed to do her work. She needed to make sure that she was not looking desperate, that she was not looking for, settling for someone just to have somebody with whom she could partner. And so we kind of established some guidelines, like what are you looking for? What are your standards for the relationship? What kind of person attracts you? And we got really clear on that. And within a very short period of time, she met the person for her lifetime. So
I can't tell you how much I love that, because I'm just picturing like she knew exactly what she was talking about when she came in.
It was
and
funny.
She had to just let you know that she knew that this was the path, the means to the end.
It was so great. It was really, really great.
If you are putting yourself out there and you feel like you're doing all the things and it's not getting you results, I've got a cough. It's so embarrassing. Okay. But then there probably are some obstacles in your way, and you should check that out.
I
mean, that's it. Yeah. Go ahead, Greg.
I'm not sure that this was intended by the question, but when I also think about deliberate, I think about having the time carved out in your life to date. So whether you're trying to intentionally meet people or it just happens, if you don't have the capacity or the time and you're not willing to carve out the time to get to know someone and in the true way, then it's not going to work out because you're just not going to put in the time. You're not putting in the work, and it's a waste of your time. And quite frankly, you're wasting their time too.
Yep.
So I've always wondered about this, but I really feel like where there's a will, there's a way, and there's time. Like if people are really interested, even if they don't have time, they'll make time.
We're getting into a really big conversation here, I think, about like when you establish goals for your life. I'm going to put, eat, sleep, and exercise are the three main ingredients to kind of keeping yourself stable in this life forever, right? And so making sure that you are taking time for those things has a lot of importance to it. But that's it, Greg. I mean, if this person really wants a relationship, if that's the goal, it's kind of like this woman who came in and that was her goal for her therapy. Like then you have to carve out time and you have to create that balance. And we all have a pie. And I'm actually amazed by it sometimes. Like I think about how many hours am I watching The White Lotus versus doing the dishes from the holiday. And it is, 3 weeks into January now. But there's so many things that I think we always take a look at. We have to carve that time out. I have a note on my computer at home that says, take time for the things that are therapy for you. And that's, right? No matter what it is. Like I have it on, right?
Yeah, I had a client recently that was lamenting about a guy that had reached out to her and how she hadn't been able to connect with him and he just ghosted her, and then how she's been so busy recently and work is overwhelming and there's this happening and then that happening in her life. And I had to stop her for a second and we had to do a little check. Well, maybe dating right now is not in the cards. You've got a lot of stuff where you just told me you can't take care of yourself. If you can't take care of yourself and you're not getting your needs fulfilled, you're certainly not in position to take that next step. So Damien, thank you very much for being our first voice note question. That was amazing.
The best. That was the best. And you just like with someone's voice, you just immediately feel like you know them and want to have a cup of coffee with them. Thank you so much, Damien.
Yeah, and we'll always entertain foreign accents. So please, the more the better.
That was fantastic. What a treat.
All right. Well, here's another treat.
Okay.
And I have some feelings on this question.
You have feelings?
You're not a robot?
I'm going to hold off. I'm going to let you guys take the first bite at this apple, but I've definitely got some feelings on this. So the question is, how can I tell if a date is a good match on a first date? Do you use small tests? And this is from Olivia. I'm 24 and my long-term relationship, I don't know what long-term relationship means when you're 24, but anyway, my long-term relationship just ended.
6 months.
I'm not looking for a relationship right now, but I think I can date someone to have fun. I and some of my friends tried to find ways to understand if someone is a good match or not. For example, when you drink a lot, do they try to get you drunk and take advantage of you? Or do they ask if you're really okay? Or when you tell a story about sexual harassment or LGBTQAI plus rights, what are their reactions? We made up some stories to use for these tests. We even thought maybe our friends could sit at the next table and observe and give us pointers. Do you also use these kinds of little tests? Do you have any recommendations? What are your thoughts?
Oh my God. Okay. Well, I think that the tests, are a terrible idea.
They are.
Because that's like, what is that? And what is this, like an interview for like the CIA and it's like only certain answers pass, or like what? So I would say you can actually ask someone their thoughts on a subject. You can talk about issues that you've actually experienced or that you're experiencing, and have that be like real and authentic, something that you're thinking, feeling, going through. But those tests are bogus. That's just another way of playing games with someone that you are on a date with. And I know that it sounds like you're trying to assess whether or not these guys are date worthy. But if I found out that you were making up random dramatic stories to see how I responded to you, I don't really think I would want to date you. Although you're probably very lovely and you're 24, and it's possible that your frontal lobe isn't totally completely developed yet, and that it's just on the way, and any minute now it will be all gelling together. But I would say until that moment, maybe just have real conversations instead. And if there are scary, vulnerable situations in your life, you can put those out there and see how he responds. I think that's brilliant. And if you say something and he's like really insensitive or says the wrongest thing, you can have that conversation, and maybe he just hasn't had that experience before. He's open to learning, or maybe he's a dud, and that's okay too. But yeah, I don't know. Those vignettes, no, I don't think so. Douglas?
Well, I want to back up a little bit.
Was I mean? Was I mean?
No, I'm actually a little surprised with how you're encouraging so clearly this sort of like, be direct, ask questions, because I love that. I think that's exactly the way to go. And I agree with you that that's gamey and manipulative. And honestly, if somebody I had one dude on a date with me, he asked me on a date, and it was to accuse me of sleeping with someone that it was the weirdest thing. He said I was dating his boyfriend. I'm like, I'm not dating anyone's boyfriend. So it was a very strange, Greg, you look confused. I'm not going to elaborate anymore. But I remember being so frustrated with someone who was not being honest with me. I literally said something really not nice to him. And I said, thanks for paying for my drink. And I walked away. I'm like, I don't play games. I think it's a really, really bad idea to play those games. However, I want to back up a little bit to your comment about what it is that you're looking for. So because of these long-term relationships at age 24 that you've had, which, when you're 24, a year seems like a long time. There could be all kinds of reasons for that. Even 5 years. Maybe this was a high school sweetheart or a college sweetheart.
It feels like we're trashing 24-year-olds right now.
I am not. I have a 21-year-old myself. And you have some younger children. I have a 34-year-old as well to compare and contrast to. But I will tell you something, and whatever long-term feels like to you. So you kind of identified, you kind of want this dating experience that isn't all that serious. And so what is that? Is that a friends with benefits you're looking for? Is it a companion you're looking for? Are you looking to casually date? And I would say, of course, I'm not sure where you're meeting these dudes that you want to test, but I would say be really clear up front. I'll be honest, if I'm going to go on a date, I'm going to find out, does that person not support our own rights as gay people to be married or have equality? I'm not going on a date with someone who doesn't think that way. Am I going to date someone who's racist? No. I'm not even going to spend time in a restaurant doing that. And, I think it's really important, and Talia, you referenced this, to be on the other side of those little weird tests. Like, I'm not someone who probably wouldn't pick up on those. And I'd be like, what's going on here? Like, ask me directly if you have a question for me. But the question is like, what are you looking for? Are you clear about that going up front? And I would say before you get into a dating situation where you're at dinner or you're having cocktails or whatnot, and you also reference, somebody who might be giving you too many drinks, etc. I didn't love that comment because that feels assaultive to me and inappropriate on so many legal levels as well. So I didn't love that part. And, please be sure to monitor your drinking and watch your drink if you're with someone you don't trust. So there's not anything going in it. I say that, with a very clear sort of seriousness about that as having 2 children who I don't want that to happen to. And it's happened to me. So I don't love that. But there's a part of this that I think weeding out those people before you find yourself needing to do that might be the answer. Like, ask those questions when you're connecting on Tinder or whatever app, your Bumble or whatever it is.
And I also sort of want to throw something out there about the idea. I mean, first of all, I actually really love that you're asking this question, because you are trying to find out all of the right information. But I have seen again and again and again that it's sort of like the healthier we are when we are starting a relationship or when we're putting ourselves out there, the healthier people we attract. And so if you are starting these relationships being sort of coy and sneaky and gamey and manipulative, you're going to be attracting the same type of person, which you're probably not wanting to be with, right?
Right.
And so maybe the best case scenario is you are making sure that you're presenting as your healthiest, most vibrant self, like watching the way that you're interacting, making sure that you're presenting the way that you feel really good about. And then you're going to be weeding out the gamey, the manipulative, the self-unaware, the douchebags.
I was going to say the people you don't want to date, nor does anybody else for that matter. You know,
That's
and
right.
I also want to say something else about, you know, this relationship that ended for you. Like, I'm somewhat curious about how that ended, what that means to you, what you learned from that relationship, because we take those previous relationships into our next one. And so you're bringing that probably into that dating experience where you might be projecting some of that onto somebody. And I would say, you know, I'm someone who doesn't believe all women, all men, we're not all alike. So, you know, not all men are dicks. Not all men are out to treat women poorly. And we all need to do our part to make that change permanent and pervasive. But, you know, you're probably taking some of that into this because there's something about how you worded that. Like, I'm not quite able to trust the person I'm with. Like, maybe there's some trust that has been compromised in your previous relationship that might be worth taking a look at and making sure that you don't bring that to your next experience.
Doug, that's a pretty brilliant insight. I loved it.
I
Thank
don't
you.
like the fact that she is leaning into the young female stereotype of game playing, and that was my gut reaction. However, I would also lean in and say that we all over time develop approaches to dating to kind of accomplish some of the things that she's talking about, but in a more mature adult approach and not necessarily in a manipulative, to your point, Talia, underhanded, covert approach, right? So for instance, for me, one of the cues about a person that I look at, and I don't throw everything on it, but how do they treat wait staff at restaurants? Are they a good tipper, or how do they order people around, or are they, you know, nice to people, understanding that, hey, that person I may not know what that person is going through. I'm not going to judge them by this one experience that, you know, I had with them. How do they do? There are situations like that, right? Like for me, I prefer coffee or tea, some sort of limited engagement, because I don't want to be forced into a dinner necessarily, and you have to go through a whole dinner if there's no chemistry or spark or anything, and you know, that's it, right? So that's one way, you know, I approach the initial, and then, you know, moving forward, then maybe looking at other situations or experiences, and as you talk to them, if you have concerns about how they treat minority or any minority group or any other concerns that you have, those conversations will happen over time. as you're relating to certain things or talking about your bisexual brother, or you're talking about
That's right.
this black friend that you have or whatever, if you have concerns about how they may integrate into your life and the friends that you have and the family, that you, or the people you call family.
So Greg,
that'll happen. But
what you're saying is that it unfolds organically. You don't have to set up a false scenario. It'll just organically unfold with experiences and time.
Exactly. And to your point, it's an organic thing that takes time. And I think what I've seen, and what I know both of you have seen, is a movement in our society where people just want it right now. They just want it to materialize in front of them. They want to order it up on an app and have that perfect person delivered right here, right now, and not go through all the work and all of the conversation and all of the interaction that actually solidifies and builds that bond. Otherwise, it's just built on a thread of, perception and assumption and maybe some hot chemistry, but there may not be any substance underlying it. I mean, you've got to put that foundation in place, and that's part of that, all that time and interaction that you have. It's just not going to happen in one date, usually.
Do you know what I wonder? Oh, go ahead, Doug. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the other thing I think about it is that, going back to the comment about I don't necessarily want to get into anything seriously that she made, I think the work still has to be done on that. Like, I think that's still a boundary that needs to be really clarified and understood by both parties. And we all know that sometimes people mean something to be very casual, and then it turns into something else, and you start having the feels, and, you start getting connected to that person. So being really clear on every step of the way. And this is an ongoing adventure. It's an ongoing journey when you start a relationship with anybody. Like, where is it going to go? And if you're really clear, this person is good for this, but it's not good for a husband or a father to my children if I want children, any of those things. Like, I think that's where there's always going to be work. Again, no matter whether that person is a friend with benefits, a fuck buddy, a companion, a casual date, or whatever it is, you really get to, really understand where each other's at by having those conversations. I also am going to go back, though. I think there's so much you can do ahead of time to make sure you don't have to wonder about some of those pieces. I don't think you should have to say my bisexual brother or my polyamorous friend or whatever. I think you can just, put those things out there. Like, I'm looking for someone who's really able to, recognize human equality and live it.
Do you have like a dating form you make people fill out before they go and meet you?
So here's the funny thing about this. I'm fully aware that after 28 years of doing psychotherapy, no, that's not right. 20, I don't know how much.
It might be right. It might be right.
Wow, that's a lot. This is what I'll say about that. I am probably not fun to date because I think people should talk. Like, I think you should talk about everything and anything. So, and I really think that, and I live it. And I've had people laugh because I'll be like, what do you think about that? Or where are you at with that? Or how important is this? And by the way, I'm also giving that. So I'm not just testing people and putting that out in there in the world. I'm sharing what it is that I'm looking for. And I'm doing that on a physical, I'm doing that on a sexual, I'm doing that on a emotional and intellectual. Like, I know at this point in my life who triggers my chemistry and what I'm looking for, which is probably the same as this 24-year-old in many ways. Like, I will do casual anything, any day. But right now, with an empty nester status in my life, I love traveling the world. I love traveling to my kids when I want to. I love no commitment to, or I guess, need to be accountable to somebody. And I'm liking that at this point in my life. Will I feel that way forever? I don't know. Will I meet Prince Charming at some point, and will he come into my life and I'll relook at that? 100% I could do that.
I'd also like to add, from a PSA perspective, if you're going to a bar and you're meeting someone for the first time, whether you're male, female, whatever, as a former bartender, always recommended to pick something that comes from a bottle or a can and that you actually watch them open it
So you don't get roofied.
Yeah, but it's a bottle or can, and you watch it being opened, and you drink from that bottle or can, and not in a glass or nothing with ice that may have something in it already. And if for any reason that you leave that drink unattended, or you're not seeing it in front of you, then just get another one.
I've also heard that they sell these things that are drink covers that you could put a straw in. Have you heard of those?
Yeah, I've heard of those, but I don't trust that, because any kind of opening at all, even if it's a straw, leaves yourself open to something.
Are you talking at a bar, or are you talking about like the drinks that we have when we work out?
They have these covers. They have these covers that you can try to cover for your drink, but I don't trust that. I mean, the only thing you can really trust is a freshly opened can or a bottle.
That's great advice.
That's always safe. That's always safe. And even, just turning your head, or not even anything that you do where it's not in front of you and you're watching it and holding it, leaves it vulnerable, and just put it down and get a new one.
It's interesting.
Or don't drink.
I'll also tell you, I don't feel like I'm somebody who's necessarily not aware, but I was drugged at a club in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro. And I look back and I'm like, I don't know when that would have happened. But it's easy to happen. I mean, the minute you go out into the dance floor, even if you put your glass somewhere where you can see it and whatnot, somebody can walk by really easy. I have no idea how that happened. It's also really just horrible. Like, you don't remember a big block of time. I woke up in the morning, I'm like, how did I get back to the hotel? How did any of this happen? And there's a lot to that story I don't need to go into, but
it's so scary.
It's really awful. And, again, as a big dude who's usually capable of taking care of myself, you can't do anything during those times. I don't remember how I got back. There was a total period of lost time, and it is scary. Yep.
And that's another reason to have the buddy system. I've never gone to clubs alone myself, and especially as a female that might be more vulnerable to some of these situations, making sure that you stick together. And you don't have one person go off and dance with someone while leaving the other one behind. Always having, sticking at least in pairs so someone can advocate for you if you're not feeling well. The last thing you want is a stranger dragging you out of the building and your friend doesn't know where you are. So just be careful, be safe out there. It's not. I know we're all excited to get back into dating and the clubs and seeing people, and it's a great thing that you can engage with people in real life and stuff again, but do it in a safe manner without playing games, without game playing.
I was going to say, we certainly got off of the topic of like, how do I find out, how do I do this? Is it okay to test or do some passive aggressive language?
I do sort of want to like circle back to something, Greg, that you said about just like, people want it all right now. They want to know all the answers. They want to give you 50 questions that you need to answer to just see whether or not they want that second date. And then you think about the time and things unfolding organically and the effort that you have to put in even before you get to that first date. And I think that people are so fatigued by the whole app life, like online dating, and every time you get ghosted or every time somebody like something starts and you think that they sound great and then they fizzle out, I think people get more fatigued and then they might be putting in less effort, which is making it harder for them to find someone that's a good fit for them. And so it's this endless cycle of we're only putting in as much effort as others are, and then the bar might be going down and down and down, and then no one's putting in any effort, and then when you do, you get drugged, so you might as well stay home with your dog and have some tea. No, is that not the right outcome?
Well, no, I understand where you're coming from on that, but I think the approach is that you can't let what other people do affect you and your approach and how you're going to live your life. I mean, if I got upset every time I was unmatched or whatever or ghosted, that would be a very unfortunate life for me to be holding on to that energy, right?
Blocked.
Or blocked.
Yes.
or even spending a lot of energy wondering, what did I say? Why am I not being liked? Why am I not being, that's a very negative space and a lot of energy that can be wasted. Instead, there's a realization that, granted, if you have those feelings, I understand why. It doesn't feel good. Right. I totally understand why. But at the same time, there's no mutuality there. They have selected no. So you can select no because you don't want to be with someone that doesn't want to be with you, right?
That is the quote of the year. I just, I've always said that, Greg. I think that's the bottom line. And we never know what it is, and we don't need to know what it is.
No.
Again, if you don't want to date someone my age, if you don't like facial hair, if you don't like a bald head, if you don't like how my tattoo, if you don't like whatever, move on. Please do me the favor. I don't want to be with someone who doesn't think I'm not the king. So
I'm going to pull together a really interesting metaphor here. It's, I've been at, 100 middle school basketball games, and I'm listening to all of this like online dating, and that maybe the motto is you win some, you lose some. But don't lose heart. Just keep your spirits high and go right back out there and put yourself out there, have a good attitude, because if you then become cynical, bitter, upset with yourself, you make it an internal issue, or hate other people, make it an external issue, it's just going to slowly downward spiral into nothingness. And so keep your spirit high, or as we say in our pug family, we've got 2 pug mixes. We say, like, how's your pug spirit? Keep your pug spirit high.
Well, and I would say that's easier said than done a lot of times. Like, I think it's really hard if you feel like that person is like on paper the greatest person for you. If they just knew who you were, they would want you back. That isn't how it works. But I think when we get blocked or rejected or something doesn't work out the way we want, we have to kind of take a look at why it is that we're doing that self-doubt on a really deep level. I mean, it's one thing to kind of put yourself up by the bootstraps and have a pug moment.
Pug spirit. Low pug spirit and a droopy, sad tail.
My high school mascot was a bulldog, so it's kind of in that same realm, like the Painesville Bulldogs. Anyway,
don't lose heart, Bulldogs.
Well, here's the deal. I mean, at the same time, really take a look at like what it is that gets triggered inside of you during those times. Like, what is it you're doubting? And do you feel like, all right, so that made me feel like I really don't love this part of how I presented myself.
Right.
Because I think oftentimes we put so much effort into getting somebody, their attention, or we get them to like us. And so if that, maybe we need to take a look at our desperation and where that comes from, so that we stay true to ourselves. So I would say it's number one, a great idea to kind of say, yeah, put yourself back out there. You don't want someone who doesn't want you. But again, take a look at what it is that you were doing and what you might do differently to make sure that you don't lose yourself in that process. Because all you need to do, as I've said many times in this dating process, is be you.
Okay.
So
love this. And then I think that maybe the bottom line then is don't wallow in the past. There is no failure. These are all learning opportunities or successes. And so you just take the juicy nugget of learning, see if there's anything you can tweak, and then just keep trucking, keep moving forward. You're just weeding them out. It's better to weed them out before that first date than find yourself 6 years in.
So I'm going to date myself back to when we used to go to shopping malls and put decals on T-shirts at all of these places that did that. And there was
those
always
were the
this
good old days,
right? And there's this one that's like, keep on trucking, and it has like a thumb going that direction and like a guy with a boot, whatever. I can see
Should we change our podcast name to Keep on Truckin'?
No.
Okay.
However.
Anyway, Olivia. going back to Olivia,
Oh, Olivia.
be yourself, have the conversation, put in the work and the time, but don't, those are great goals, great things to concerns that you may have. And, think about what you're taking into other relationships from your previous one, and just take your time.
And don't
It'll
settle.
happen.
Don't settle.
Don't settle. And it'll all unfold organically. And you have all the time in the world, Olivia.
Unlike some of us.
Unlike some of us that are knocking at death's door. Just kidding.
Oh, ouch.
But
Sorry.
don't worry, I'll still be here at the podcast.
Oh my God.
All right. Good luck, Olivia.
Bye,
Take care.
everyone. Thanks for
Take care.
listening.
Have a question for Doug or Talia? Email us your questions at questions@we'renotfine.com. Eligible questions will be randomly selected for upcoming episodes. For details, visit our website at we'renotfine.com.
Join us every Tuesday for new conversations, new challenging topics, and fun.
Good luck, Cindy.